Every few years, a new manga is published in Weekly Shonen Jump that ends up somewhat defining the generation of the magazine in which they came out in. You have the big three, MHA and Black Clover after them, and Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer after that. A lot of these stories follow a similar basic structure that has been tried and true and refined over the decades. Rising power levels, a goody two-shoes main character, and a clearly defined goal for that main character to achieve. However, there are some stories published in Weekly Shonen Jump that dare to take that formula and turn it on its head, and this can lead to some of the most interesting stories in the genre. And of course, one of these stories is Hunter x Hunter. Oh, yeah, and I guess this weird manga about some guy with a chainsaw in his head. The past few years, Chainsaw Man exploded in popularity, having millions of copies in circulation before its anime adaptation was even announced. It had blisteringly fast pacing, a dark, grim world, and a lovable cast of characters. Reading the manga is such a unique experience that I don't think any other manga will be able to properly replicate. And I'm sure a lot of that is due to Tatsuki Fujimoto, the author of Chainsaw Man's huge love for Western media. The manga is still ongoing in its second major saga, but I've noticed something weird when it comes to this manga. While it was massively popular a couple years ago, it really feels like Chainsaw Man has been losing that chokehold that it had on its audience ever since it started its second part. At first, it felt like it was only my friends. Then I saw a ton of discussion online about how people felt like they were falling out of love with Chainsaw Man, and I really want to discuss why. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. But before we look at why Chainsaw Man kind of fell off, we must first look at why it became so popular in the first place. There are a lot of things to love in Chainsaw Man Part 1, and I'm of the firm belief that Part 1 is one of, if not the best manga published in Weekly Shonen Jump of the past decade. That is very high praise. So if you somehow haven't read Chainsaw Man, first of all, why are you even watching this video? Secondly, let me pitch the premise of Chainsaw Man to you. Imagine a world filled with devils based off of people's collective fear of a concept. The more people fear said concept, the stronger the devil attached to it becomes. Of course, in this world, humans try to fight back against these devils, and we follow the Public Safety Devil Hunters, a government organization that hunts the devils. Despite this, however, their efforts yield little results. Now, who do we follow in this story? Well, we follow Denji. This guy has a miserable life. In the first chapter, he sells multiple organs due to an immense debt that he owes to the Yakuza, including his left nut, is broke as hell, living in a little shack on the side of a hill, eating a singular slice of plain bread, and at the end of the chapter gets diced up into little slices by zombies. Zombies who are the same Yakuza that were keeping him broke, then gets thrown into a dumpster only to make a pact with his little pet chainsaw dog to show it Denji's ideal life, because that's all he ever wanted. And because of that, now he's a chainsaw on his head and gets into a bloody battle with all of the zombies. This first chapter immediately sets expectations for what the rest of the series is going to look like from here on out. Things only get wilder. Those qualities of most popular shonen action manga that I brought up previously, like the goody two-shoes MCs, the rising power levels, and the huge goal. Yeah, Chainsaw Man takes all those ideas and completely flips them. Denji can be an annoying ass. Characters don't really get power-ups, and Denji's grand goal in the beginning is to just have a normal life and I guess to feel some boobies. Despite how simple all of this may sound when you put it on paper, Everything else about this manga is absurd as what the first chapter should bring you to expect. I think the levels of absurdity this manga has in its run is a huge part of why so many people loved Chainsaw Man Part 1. I mean, just look at the scene where a bunch of co-workers are sitting together at a bar, just having a couple of drinks. Pretty normal and calm scene. Only for it to turn a bit hot and spicy when Himeno gets too drunk and starts making out with Denji. Denji feels the warmth of her tongue. It feels so soft. It's like it's melting in his mouth. Wait, what do you mean by melt? Oh my god, what the hell? Chainsaw Man is filled to the brim with stuff like this. And when you couple that with just how fast things can go from calm to absolutely batshit insane in the blink of an eye, it leads to a book that is all over the place in the best ways possible. The unhinged nature of Chainsaw Man couples very well with just how dang good of a writer Fujimoto is. I mean, he's able to make this panel of two dudes kicking a man in the balls be a really meaningful moment for both of these characters. But in order to explain why I think that, it would be important to talk about some of the side characters next. Early on, we are introduced to Makima, Power, and Aki. These three characters are the most important characters in Part 1 behind Denji obviously, with the latter two becoming his best friends. Over the course of the first part, Denji, Power, and Aki become somewhat of a found family with one another, which is really sweet to see because Denji and Aki's first interaction end with Denji kicking Aki in the balls multiple times, and shortly after that, Power tries to kill Denji by feeding him to a giant bat devil so she can get back her pet cat. First off, we have Aki, a man hellbent on revenge after the gun devil, the strongest devil in the world, killed his entire family. So hellbent on revenge that if something doesn't help him towards achieving his goal, it doesn't even matter to him. We see this through how his apartment looks. It's very empty. He only really has basic things like his bed, laundry, food. You never even see Aki really use his TV. He's gotten down a perfect morning routine, which is why he absolutely despises it when Denji is forced to move in with him, and it completely ruins everything for him. But the first steps that lead to these two becoming close friends, even to the point of becoming brothers to one another, is through the existence of Himeno. Himeno doesn't have much screen time, but she has lasting effects on the story. She's gotten used to her partners dying, so she tries to make the most of her time with them, because she knows they probably won't last long hunting devils. However, despite this, Aki is different to her. At first, she just didn't want him to die, but due to them being work partners for a while, she started to gain feelings for him. She just wanted to spend more time with Aki, and got him into certain things. At first, Aki smoking was just a thing he did, but then we see a flashback of how Himeno got him into smoking while they were just starting out as work partners. Then cutting to a scene where Aki is asking Himeno for more cigs. It just leads to a really nice moment that shows how close they've become. For Denji, well, after the vomit kiss, Denji brings Himeno back home since she's really drunk, and Denji ends up staying for the night. After some, misadventures, the next morning, Himeno offers Denji to actually help him get with Makima if he helps her get with Aki. This interaction leads to Denji and Himeno actually kind of becoming friends, something Denji really lacks at this point. A couple chapters later, Himeno sacrifices herself to the ghost devil because a man with a katana on his head wants to kill Denji, because it turns out the leader of the zombie yakuza Denji killed in the first chapter was his grandpa. So yeah. Now, cue the ball kicking panel after Denji beats Katana Man, which now with all that context, kinda makes this scene beautiful. It's just two guys kicking the shit out of a guy that basically killed one of their friends. It's like seeing the first seeds of what will end up being really close friends planted. This kind of insane yet intricate character writing is shown all throughout Chainsaw Man and shines spectacularly within its main trio. Now, I won't go into Denji's relationship with Power, mainly because I think that if you've already read Chainsaw Man, you already know how equally beautiful it is. And if you haven't, then I don't want to give anything away because I really think you should read it for yourself. Same thing with Makima. I think she's an amazing character, and her inclusion completes the main themes of Chainsaw Man and makes everything come full circle. But I don't really want to spoil any of that if you haven't read Chainsaw Man, because The twists with this character in particular are great. Earlier, I brought up Fujimoto's love for movies. This is common knowledge among fans at this point, and you can really see those influences when reading Chainsaw Man. Couple that with just how dang good he is as an artist. I mean, just look at this. The art in this manga is electric, and it's honestly surprising that the more you look into Fujimoto, you find just how insecure he can come off about said art skills. What's really unique about the artistry in this manga though, is the paneling. Fujimoto experiments a lot with paneling in Chainsaw Man, and it seems like he has this obsession with just pushing how far paneling can be used in manga. I think one of my favorite pages in all of Chainsaw Man is this page right here. It's a simple joke, but using the exact same drawing for both reactions of Denji just make it way funnier than it's supposed to be. The manga is filled with pages like this, and every time I see unique paneling while reading Chainsaw Man, it's just such a delight. Another really fun moment when it comes to paneling that everyone knows is the first fight against the Katana Man. The way the hand that flicks Aki's sword into Katana Man comes from out the panel really makes it feel like this otherworldly forbidden force is being used. Okay, we all know that the manga is great, but what about the anime? Discussing how the anime turned out I think is more than crucial to why I feel like Chainsaw Man is nowhere near the heights it previously reached in terms of popularity, as this was a huge moment for Chainsaw Man as a whole. It's a huge moment for any manga, and this was supposed to be Chainsaw Man reaching completely new heights. Keyword supposed to be. Don't get me wrong, I think the anime is phenomenal and highlights everything good about Chainsaw Man and reformats it into a completely new medium. However, not everyone actually agrees with this sentiment. First off, in the very first episode, the fight against the zombie devil has a lot of flip-flopping between Denji having hand-drawn animation and CGI. And as a whole, season 1 has a lot of CGI, and people just really don't like CGI. I get that, and it's a preference, but people went ballistic over this, and in Chainsaw Man's defense, I don't really know what you guys were expecting. This is a series filled with complex designs. Animating a lot of the stuff just wouldn't be possible in a production like this. There's deadlines to meet here, folks. But either way, people weren't happy, and from there on out, the anime would be looked under a lens by a lot of people. The anime has this washed out color palette that I personally think looks great, and it really adds to the slower, more methodical type of storytelling they were going for in this season. Of course, it has its fast-paced action moments, even adding entirely new cuts to fights that weren't in the manga, but the show really highlights those slower, more intricate moments from the show, like the finger-biting scene with Makima, or my favorite addition in the anime being Aki's 2-minute morning routine, which only exemplifies the annoyance he feels when Denji comes to live with him. Additions like these are made when the people working on the show actually understand the character and care about what they are doing. At the end of the day, what makes this anime really shine for me is that focus on these slower character moments. I feel like when reading the manga, it's so easy to get caught up in the in-your-face moments and the spectacular and intense action. The anime offers a different perspective when it comes to the story and really highlights what I feel is the most important parts of Chainsaw Man. The characters. Don't get me wrong, both the manga and anime are very good in their own ways. I'm not putting down the manga to bring up the anime, I'm just saying it's good in a different way. Okay, with all of that out of the way, we can finally start to talk about why exactly it feels like Chainsaw Man isn't anywhere as popular as it used to be despite having an ongoing manga. I think everyone familiar with Chainsaw Man knows exactly what we need to talk about next, and that's the anime reception. Okay, before we actually get into the manga's second major saga, I want to go back and really highlight just how hated season 1 of the anime is. You see, the side of the fanbase that really hated the anime really hated the anime, and I feel like there was also a huge new group of eyes on Chainsaw Man due to the anime coming out, and a lot of discussion around Chainsaw Man before the anime came out was just about how insane it is. So a lot of those fans probably came in expecting this high intensity shonen anime with crazy fights, but instead what they got was this. There's no way around it, this isn't everyone's cup of tea, which is totally fine. And if people just stopped watching the anime because of that, I don't think there'd be any discussion here at all. The problem is that people bitched a lot. And it's this constant complaining during the anime's runtime that led to a huge series of unfortunate events. First of all, I don't think the anime really made that much money, only really selling around 1,700 Blu-rays, which in the anime industry, Blu-ray sales is a huge part of whether or not a show is a success for whatever reason. There was so much discourse over this that MAPPA had to come out and actually say that the show was technically a financial success. Regardless, it has been 3 years since season 1 came out, and the movie is just now being released later this year, with the previous director leaving and a new one coming in with an art style change. It's clear that what they were doing with season 1 just wasn't sustainable, which is a shame, because while this new trailer for the movie is crazy and awesome, I'm afraid that that's what the focus will be for the show moving forward. But enough of that. Now it's finally time for why you actually came here. The dreaded Chainsaw Man Part 2. Okay, so I originally started writing this section of the script before I actually reread Part 2, which is dumb, I know, but I did that because I felt like I could at least start it, since this section was more or less supposed to be about the reception to Part 2 more than the actual content of the manga, since it wasn't done yet. Regardless, I would still actually have to read it, since the quality of the second part does come into question when a lot of the community feels like that's the reason for the perceived popularity drop-off. So I went ahead and reread it, and while I thought that it was slower paced and more boring compared to Part 1 on reread, this part is crazy. From the rip, Part 2 picks up what Part 1 puts down and just runs with it. It carries a lot of what made Part 1 so great in terms of the crazy pacing, deranged moments, and just outright batshit crazy devil fights. And it does this with a completely new cast of characters to introduce that tag with Denji. Of these characters, the most notable of which is Asa Mitaka, whose introduction has a very striking resemblance to Denji's. Asa's wish in the first chapter of Part 2 is very similar to Denji's wish in the first chapter of Part 1. In fact, her entire story kind of feels like a reimagining of Denji's. She's a young high school girl that recently lost her parents and isolates herself from her class. Her class recently adopts the chicken devil named Bucky as their class pet, where in 3 months they're gonna kill and eat Bucky. Asa hates Bucky just because it's a devil. She expresses that she just hates most things in life, even having friends, but the class president decides to befriend her. 3 months pass and the class decides they aren't gonna eat Bucky because Bucky's their friend. This shocks Asa because she really wanted Bucky out of there. The class goes outside to play soccer and everyone asks Asa to come play with her, even Bucky. This makes Asa realize that everyone doesn't actually hate her. Right then she trips and crushes Bucky, killing him. A couple days later, Asa is invited out by the teacher and the class president to go and visit Bucky's grave. But it's here that it's revealed that the teacher's been sleeping with the class president, and the class president is jealous of Asa because of how much attention he gives to her. She's made a pact with the Justice Devil in order to get her happy ending with the teacher. It's revealed that the class president made Asa trip and crush Bucky, making her realize that it wasn't actually her fault, and that she made life harder on herself than it had to be. She wishes she could have lived a bit more selfishly. Right before she dies, the War Devil makes a pact with Asa, and the War Devil takes care of the Justice Devil and kills the teacher to show off its powers, with the end of the chapter showing that the War Devil's real target is Chainsaw Man. I love this chapter as a dedicated introduction for what is essentially the second main character of Chainsaw Man, with Asa getting as much, if not more screen time in Part 2 compared to Denji. And just like Denji's dynamic with Power and Aki, you get to see Asa and the War Devil, whose name is Yoru, sort of evolve into something you might consider friends temporarily. On top of that, you also get to witness the weird but sorta cute romance that forms between Asa and Denji. And don't worry, because if you think it's all clear skies for Denji in this part, it isn't. He has a lot of trauma to unpack from the first part, and Part 2 shows that a process like that is messy and difficult in the most Chainsaw Man way possible. But Despite all the praise I have for part 2 on reread, I still think my initial thoughts when I was first reading it over 3 years ago were honestly kind of valid. The reason I still think this way is because of multiple facts, like how instead of being published in the regular Weekly Shonen Jump magazine, part 2 moved to Jump Plus, the online counterpart to the publisher. Creators in this branch of the magazine have more creative freedom, as well as the ability to have more irregular update schedules for new chapters, whereas in the Meg magazine, working conditions are grueling, authors having to get a new chapter out every single week. I'm sure you've heard of the many stories of famous authors nearly dying or just overall getting incredibly sick under the system, which honestly sucks to see. With Fujimoto's newfound freedom under Jump Plus, part 2 has been seeing frequent breaks, most of the times getting 3 chapters a month instead of the regular 4, which honestly adds to the feeling of a slower pacing when you're keeping up because of the longer waits in between chapter. On top of that, outside of Asa, a lot of the new characters just don't feel as memorable as the characters from part 1. We have Yoshida, that guy from the International Assassins arc in part 1. He takes on a more central position in part 2, but despite that, his character isn't really expanded on, and he more so just acts as this face for public safety to show that the organization still has a major role in the story. We also have Fumiko, another public safety agent that seems to know more than what she lets on, but we don't truly know for sure yet. Neither of these characters, despite spending so much time around Denji, really feel like they have much of an impact on anything, and while that may be the point, it leaves this gap in the story where Denji doesn't really feel like he has a main group to stick with, rather he's just stuck with these guys because he has to be. Asa doesn't really fill this role either because first off, she's one person, and second off, she's the main love interest, so she can't really fill that friend role that's missing from part 1. Obviously, part 2 isn't over yet, so we can't say for sure, but as of the time of writing this video, the main villain recently truly revealed herself, so it looks like we're reaching the end of part 2, maybe by the end of this year. Despite these problems, I still think part 2 has been more than worth the read, and if you're like me and felt like you were falling out of love with Chainsaw Man because of part 2, I strongly advise you to go back, take a day or two, and just read through all of part 2. The back-to-back reading experience has been nothing short of amazing with this manga. So, what now? Why did Chainsaw Man fall off? Well, I think it's a mixture of things that I've brought up throughout this video. First off, let's go back and look at the anime. It just wasn't what it needed to be in order to capture that huge audience and keep them around. While I think some of this is due to the nature of Chainsaw Man as a story, and while I also think that the anime is great, I can't escape the fact that the majority of people probably didn't click with it. It was only 12 episodes long, which in today's anime landscape just isn't enough time to really capture people and keep them interested. Mix that with the use of CGI, which a lot of people really hate, it just wasn't big enough of a moment. Luckily, the movie trailer is much more vibrant and is a start of adapting a lot of part 1's best content, and hopefully season 2 will also be 24 episodes, adapting probably the rest of part 1 and finally capturing that worldwide anime fanbase. On top of that, I'm hoping that either when part 2 is done, people will go back and read the entire thing in one fell swoop, or that when the anime gets around to adapting it, people realize just how dang good it actually is. Chainsaw Man may have fallen off in terms of popularity, but I truly think that in due time, this will turn around and this weird yet beautiful story will widely be appreciated once again. Well, that's it. This script took me a while to make, and I'm sure that editing the video may take even longer. I put a lot of work into this one, and I hope that the final product shows her it. So if you want even more videos like this one, subscribe. Stay tuned next time where I talk about the video game crash. Is it coming? Are we in one? Who knows? Maybe by the time you're watching this video, it's already out. And if it is, then you can click here. Okay, bye now. Thanks for watching.